Today is the 23rd, I believe. And today I'm going to talk about gated communities and why they're not a good thing for somebody with a disability and isolated like residential institutions and those kind of settings. So basically, if you're new to my channel, I lived for 10 years in a dorm at my residential school that I went to. And for the last couple of years, they noticed that it was not working very well for me. It had worked in the past, but my needs had changed to where I needed to be in more of a least restrictive setting. I needed to be more in something like where I am right now, in an actual home in the community. And the community-based was actually the best option for me. So, basically, I will explain how I got there in it, like, the mentality tests and all that kind of stuff in another episode, but, basically what happened, was the way they noticed it was from my patterns of behavior issues. So, with the setting I was in, because I was really bored with that setting. I did not do well with a lot of restrictive environment that it had, with a lot of the rules that it had. And that kind of thing. I don't do well in places that have a lot of rules and restrictions, like gated communities and places like that. Which kind of leads up to my point. If you're doing a gated community, if you're trying to start a gated community, there is a law out there. And sorry, I'm getting over a cold. There's a law. I'm not a lawyer, but there is a law out there that states they cannot isolate disabled people in a gated community. You cannot. You have to take them out in the community. No matter how much you want to isolate them and keep them safe, that's not going to keep them safe. And that is why this law was created. At least to my knowledge, anyway. Because they want a more meaningful life for people with disabilities in the actual community, not in an isolated setting. So, basically, all I'm saying is everybody could live in the community if you just try. They may need different supports depending on the person, but they could all live in the actual community. You don't need a gated community for disabled. You don't. Because then it'll get into a trend where, like, basically they'll try to move all autistic people into a gated community. And if you're somebody like me that has autism, that's not going to work for some people with autism. Some people that are savants and that kind of stuff, that does not work for savants, and people that are higher functioning, and some people that are lower functioning, it would not work for. Like, it might work for my sister, because she's severely autistic. It might work, it might be something my sister would want, but it would not, but it's not something my mom wants for somebody like my sister. My mom wants my sister in the actual community, and so does my sister's team, because they think that would be a better option for her, and they think she'd have a more meaningful life like everybody else would have. So, unless your gated community is integrated into the actual community, that's not going to last long. Your gated community is going to be closed down by, I don't know what the official organization is that enforces the law for disabled to be in the community. But it's by that organization, they are going to target your community if they find out about it, and they're going to have it shut down. And I am going to have some of those places shut down. I mean, I understand the situation for somebody like Fathering Autism is different because theirs is actually with people that they would actually trust, that they would actually trust with their daughter. But a lot of these gated communities, but a lot of times it's not going to be like their situation because theirs is basically 1 in a million when you talk about gated community. Theirs is a really good situation actually. But a lot of these gated communities aren't going to be like theirs. They're not going to be like that. Like what you see in Fathering Autism. They're like what their school is creating. And I think their school, is making a bold move because to keep their their autistic people safe, because that's what that's just their model. But that's and they are a good school from what I hear. So that one I'm going to exempt because that's a really good setting and they know what they're getting into. Whereas in a lot of them, you will not know what you're getting into. So a lot of them, you don't know what you're getting into. If you put your autistic son or daughter in a gated community, how are you going to get the staff that are going to know how to work with them? Nobody's going to know how to work with them if you put all autistic people in gated communities. Nobody. You won't be able to get staff for those gated communities because they will not have been exposed to autism in the actual community. So that's, except for in rare cases. So that's kind of where what people are overlooking, the fact that people are overlooking is that, oh, we're going to be around forever to advocate for this gated community. Well, that's not always the best option. So I think that I like the idea of how for mental health, they're going more person-centered. I think we should do that for people with autism. Because we can't put all autistic people in gated communities. That's not going to work. So we need to come up with we need to have person-centered planning for people with autism and have a team observe the autistic client and say, hey, what is the best for this autistic person? Do they do better in the actual community or do they do better in a gated community? The people that I think do well in a gated community, and this is just my opinion, are people that need something more isolated because
0 hour 8 minutes 33
they
seconds.
Do better in something more structure. They do better in something that's more restrictive. And that's not everybody. There's a lot of people that aren't like that. So with autism and other disabilities that aren't like that. So yeah, basically gated communities and institutions are not good places for your disabled. They may look good on paper, but they're not the greatest for disabled. I would say if you're going to have a gated community, have that as only an alternative for the most severe cases, cases that would not be able to handle the actual community. Cases where, the parents would not take them out in the community because they're not able to handle them out in the community. Those kind of people I would put in a gated community. I would not put somebody like my sister in a gated community. Myself, I would not put in a gated community. Because a lot of times people use them as a one-size-fits-all. So I think we should avoid doing that altogether for everybody, unless the team determines that that's the best thing for that particular person, not for the particular group. And basically, in gated communities, your son or daughter with autism will be prone to abuse. And there's nothing you can really do about it. It's just the nature of the environment. Because some people, I'm going to quote this from somebody that's said this, and they don't view disabled like this now, but back then they used to view them like this. They're like, a lot of the staff were like, when you live amongst shit, you become shit. And excuse my language, but they've actually said that about disabled people like back in the 60s and 50s, and not any time recently. So that we don't want that to happen again. So I think if you're gonna, I would use a gated community only as a last resort, not as a one size fits all. I mean, I would use it as either a transition service, or for those extreme cases, it could be permanent, but I would use it for everybody else as more of a transition service or as a day program service. And I would use, like, when they're done with school, if you have one of those schools that does this, I would use, when they turn 21, the school could be used as a day program. Like the school that people from Fathering Autism go to, they have a vocational program. That actually is a good example of how a school could be used as a day program, because they have a 28-year-old. So those kind of schools I feel like should be more common, but I don't think they should all of them should build gated communities and expect everybody to live there. I think what you should do first, if you're going to put them in a gated community, is look at what their needs are before moving them into that. And looking at, do they need more community-based? Would they do better in an So I think rather than just a gated community and that's it, they should have more options. They should have the gated community with the group homes, but they should have it where some clients go out in the community every day, the actual community, and they actually transition to living in the community. So for some people, it could be used as a transition, so they can have transitional housing in that gated community. Some people, it could be used as permanent housing, so they have permanent housing. So they have different sections of the community. One could be transitional and one could be permanent. That's how I think it should be run. Gated communities should be run. Well, anyway, that's basically my video for today.
Stop button.
And I will talk to you guys later.
Pause button. Stop button.